All right, plug's gone. Now we're into the news. Steve, I wanted nothing more originally than to just bring you in and talk about your storied career and just your personal life because you're an interesting guy. But the world events got in the way, right? And so there's been a big shakeup in the industry that we know about and we're going to get into in depth. But first, I'd like to show a little something here, a little timeline that I put together, mostly with info from Wikipedia or from Dan Garino's great book, Comic Shop. Dan, if you're watching, hi. And so let's take a look at that if you don't mind, and you can correct me if there's any mistakes here. So let's bring this up. So 1982, from my research, you purchased the remains of Urjack's distribution, either from Phil Suling or from somebody who had after him?
No, it was actually Irwin Schuster and his son Jackie and the other brother Hal that owned New Media Urjack. We didn't actually purchase them so much as we bought selected assets and liabilities and took over the existing customers.
Right, which in our next slide, as we'll see, turned into sort of a theme. And this is not just in the comics industry, but in all industries, there was industry consolidation, right? As small players that maybe weren't business savvy or as well capitalized came in and out, you were able to acquire some of the better players or some of the talent from those other distribution and build the strength of your business.
Yeah, well, on February 1st of 1982 was when I incorporated Diamond Comic Distributors. At the time, I was also a retailer at Geppi's Comic World, and I separated the companies at that point. And Diamond went on a spree of acquisitions. I'd always maintained a close relationship with a lot of my fellow distributors, going to all the distributor meetings. And over the years, I like to think that they liked me, so that if anybody ever felt like they might want to sell out, they felt comfortable coming to me because I was somebody I felt that they felt they could trust, and it worked out over the years. The biggest purchase, really in 1988 was when I bought out Bud Plant, who at the time was the third largest distributor, and we were second, and that's the date that you could put on the calendar where we became the world's largest distributor of comics.
Great. The next piece here is in 1995, a little something happened. Marvel Comics decided, for whatever reason, to get into the distribution business. They decided, hey, man, that Diamond and whoever else is getting why should they get that cut? Why can't we do that? And it set off a whole series of chain reactions from that. Do you want to talk us briefly about that?
Well, at that time, Ronald Perlman, the infamous billionaire who owned Revlon and Coleman Camping Equipment and a variety of other companies, had purchased Marvel from Heroes of New World, and he took it public. And actually, the company was doing great up in that period and ran the stock prices way up to, I think Marvel had a $3 billion market cap at the time. But it was hard to sustain because there had been a lot of gimmick covers and get-rich-quick ideas. The speculators from the baseball card market had came over and inflated the volume. And quite frankly, a lot of the stores that opened up were, I think it was as many as 7,500 stores at one time, and it was just a bogus volume. And when he could no longer increase the price on the comics, the elasticity of the pricing was gone, they turned inwardly and they bought up a bunch of licensees. They bought Fleer, they bought Skybox. Then, ironically, they got down to the nitty-gritty and looked at our pathetic margins and said, we want to be a distributor too. And much to our chagrin, we found out the hard way that they were going to buy a distributor, Ivan Snyder at Heroes World, and we were all going to lose 35% of our volume with that one act.
Now, do you feel that was just a straight up blunder for them to even attempt it, or was it just a matter of bad execution on their part?
I think that, it's easy to second guess now because it's playing Monday morning quarterback. But at the same token, any business, whether you're getting into somebody else's business, or whether it be distributing, whether it be retailing, whether it be manufacturing, you really have to have some expertise in it in order to do it well and to compete. I think it was maybe well-intentioned. They thought they had something on the line there that they could do. And they probably basically just underestimated the job that a distributor does, which is often the case. The middleman is always the guy that's viewed as unnecessary. But we do more than just ship and receive. We actually do a lot of other things that I think the retailers have found out that are necessary, and we work on the thinnest margins. So as to whether it was ill-planned, I think that they at that time they had too many other things going on, trying to perform for the stock market, and it wasn't as internally thought out as it could have been. And as a result, it was a complete failure.
That's a pretty fair assessment. And your reaction to this, which in my mind was the smart business move to do, was, well, if you're going to go exclusive with your own distributor, we should pursue exclusive distribution agreements with the other major players. You quickly went exclusive with DC, Dark Horse, Image, and Archie, which basically is the rest of the comic book industry. I mean, there is more, but it's a very small percentage.
Well, a little history lesson here is what happened at that time when Marvel made their announcement. They were not only going to go exclusive and cut us all off, they were not going to carry anyone else's product, which probably was, designed to see if it affected the other publishers negatively. So my dear friend Paul Levitz contacted me, and he also, I think at the time, contacted Capital City, who was our biggest competitor, and he didn't really want to get into distribution. But he realized that he was in a pretty powerful position at the time because he could kind of be a kingmaker. And he made it known that he was going to go, rather than buy a distributor, they were going to go exclusive with one. And we, competed for that against Capital City, and we were fortunate enough to get selected.
So I've heard a lot of things. There's been a lot of rumors. And if you can't comment on the specifics of that deal, I understand. But it's often been put out there that part of that exclusivity deal with DC was that DC had the option to buy Diamond Comics distributors. Can you confirm or deny that?
That's a known fact in the industry. It was actually leaked very shortly thereafter the contract was signed inadvertently. And DC had no intention of buying Diamond. It was very plainly stated to us that that was more of a protection for them, I guess, in some way, and gave them comfort. And I really didn't mind having that hanging over my head because I trusted Paul, and I knew that everything he had ever said to me in the past was true. So there was no reason to believe anything he was saying to me now was going to be any different.
And quick correction from John Jackson Miller of Comicron. The only guy I would trust on this stuff over Wikipedia is that it was not Archie. It was a claim that you went. All right, moving on. 1997, it sure didn't last long. They tried it. They failed. Heroes World folds. Marvel goes exclusive with Diamond. And that leads to a new era in comics. But first, there was a challenge. There was a question of a monopoly. Diamond went through antitrust hearings to determine whether they were or were not a monopoly harmful to the buying public. Got any comments on that? You came through smelling like a rose. It was deemed that you did not violate whatever antitrust rules there were out there.
Well, putting myself in the position of a retailer or a publisher, for that matter, was a logical thing for people to be concerned about our eggs being, so to speak, in one basket. And there was a number of retailers and even probably publishers, that I know specifically, who were cooperating, I guess, with the Justice Department to look in. They really didn't investigate Diamond per se. They were looking at the comic industry as a whole and how did it get to be this? How did there end up being one distributor for all intents and purposes? But when they did their homework, the Justice Department, thankfully, we were innocent, I guess, because we didn't cause this to happen. The concept of exclusivity was something that was pretty much a logical progression given what had happened. So they ruled that they actually said that, and it's misstated sometimes, they say we're not a monopoly. They actually did say the term we were a monopoly, but we were benign in that we did not hurt the industry. In fact, it was argued strongly that the consolidation was good for the industry. I mean, I understand people don't like not having other choices per se, but the economies of scale that were brought to the table at a time when the industry was half-sizing. I remember, at the risk of disclosing figures, in 1993 at the peak, when Diamond was already the largest distributor, we had a way of knowing our market share because of some allocations that would be given out based on market share. So we were deemed to be, as the number one distributor, 44% of the market. And in 1993, at the peak of all the death of Superman and all the other things that were happening to drive people to the stores, Diamond had done $222 million worth of business at 44% of the market. Well, here we become the only distributor, and we're doing 168. That's how big the market sunk. So the concept was that the industry was fragile. There needed to be some consolidation because you know what? At the end of the day, we, the consumer, it's our fault. The reason there's a Walmart, the reason there's an Amazon is because we want the best there is and we want it at the cheapest price. And there's only one way you can give that: volume. And as a result, That happened in our industry, and it's not unique to our industry. It might be somewhat unique that one distributor prevailed, but we were such a small industry, there wasn't enough volume to keep everybody else afloat. And fortunately, the industry teamed together, found ways to make it happen, created this concept of exclusivity. Retailers were able to combine their volume and be able to get a better discount because of their collective volume, as opposed to if they had just bought all their products from Marvel, they would have been their discount would have been based on just Marvel volume, whereas in our case, the Marvel volume helped them get their DC discounted or whatever else. So, long story short, that challenge was something that was probably necessary in the industry at the time. And the fact that we've lasted 25 years in that system with no real complaints of being an ogre, or that we may get complaints about our service at times because we're human, but we've never been accused, I don't think, to my knowledge, of doing something so onerous and illegal that it would take that challenge and make it be something reconsidered.
Okay, I'll say this. I worked for Diamond, or I worked in a comic book store since 1986. And we used Diamond as well as Capital Cities and other distributors when they existed and through the consolidation. And I will say that our experience was always that Diamond had just the best service in general. And this, coming through the monopoly hearings, led into what I like to call, you obviously have all people know about the golden age, the silver age, the modern age, the bronze age. Let's talk about the diamond age of comics. Okay, Steve, this is what I have deemed 2000 to 2020, when you emerged from the monopoly hearings, the antitrust hearings, unscathed, and you had basically a 20-year run as the exclusive king of comics in North America anyway, and arguably the world, right? Inarguably the world, I think.
Well, we qualify by saying we're the world's largest distributor of English language comics, because I know there's about a $5 billion industry in Japan. Right. And if there happens to be one distributor selling it all, I think they would beat us. But at the same token, I don't know that. But, it's a privilege to have that position. I mean, I don't even to this day understand how we got lucky enough to be in the position we're in. And quite frankly, it's a responsibility I take very seriously. I mean, we all worry about our families and we worry about our next meal and our food. But I can honestly say that aside from my family and my employees, I worry about how everything I do affects the industry, because it needs all the support it can get. And I would never forsake that, for the sake of a quick buck. We work on the smallest margins.